It's a model of the Earth. And you can see it is at an angle. That is the tilt of the Earth. So our Earth is actually tilted at a 23.5 degree angle from the vertical. So this would be vertical at 90 degree. So 90 degree. Okay. And this is tilted at a 23.5 degree angle. So it's tilted on its axis. The axis is the imaginary line that goes through the Earth from the north to the south. The equator is that imaginary line that goes around the circumference of the Earth. And that equator divides the Earth into two hemispheres. The Northern Hemisphere up here and the Southern Hemisphere down here. And it just demonstrated the seasons and how the tilt of the Earth and its position in relationship to the sun really determines what season we are experiencing in the different hemispheres. So when, let's say this is the sun, obviously this is not to scale. Now you can see though, this Earth is tilted. So there's a tilt to the Earth. So in this case, the Northern Hemisphere of the Earth is tilted toward the sun. So this would be summer in the Northern Hemisphere, and it would be winter in the Southern Hemisphere. Because right now, the Northern Hemisphere is receiving direct light from the sun. The Southern Hemisphere is receiving indirect light. Now remember, when the Earth goes around the sun, this is called revolution, the angle does not change. So now we have a different situation. The Northern Hemisphere is pointed away from the sun. See, it's an angled. So the Northern Hemisphere is pointed away. So the Northern Hemisphere would be experiencing winter. It's getting indirect sunlight. Where the Southern Hemisphere now, you see the Southern Hemisphere is tilted toward the sun. So the Southern Hemisphere would be experiencing summer because it's getting direct sunlight. So again, if we look at this, if you can see, the Earth is tilted at an angle. Right? And tilted a little too much, but okay, so here we have the Earth and the sun. The Northern Hemisphere, in this case right now, it is tilted toward the sun. So when the Earth is in this position, it is experiencing summer in the Northern Hemisphere and winter in the Southern Hemisphere. Because right now in this position, the Northern Hemisphere is getting direct sunlight. The Southern Hemisphere is getting indirect sunlight. Oh. So now, if we look at the angle of rotation, so the Earth is tilted on its axis. There's a tilt to the Earth, and that tilt is 23.5 degrees. So let's look at this in a drawing. So here we have the Earth. All right, if it were if the axis were perfectly straight, we're looking at, then it would be 90 degrees with the equator. So here we have the equator. Okay, this half above, north of the equator, is this Northern Hemisphere. Now our Earth is not straight up and down like this. It's tilted at a 23.5 degree angle. So when we draw the Earth, here would be, this would be the vertical line, but our axis is tilted. And this is 23.5 degrees. So make sure when you're drawing pictures of the Earth, you're including the equator, okay, which is like the circumference. It goes around the Earth, center of the Earth. And the axis is that imaginary line that goes from north to south. Okay, so this is, and always label what is what. And this is the northern hemisphere. So that's why you must label what line is the equator and what line is the axis. So think of the equator as going east-west, horizontal. Axis is going north-south, vertical. But you have to label which is which. In this position, the sunlight is hitting the southern hemisphere directly. And it's hitting the northern hemisphere indirect. It's not getting direct hit on the northern hemisphere. So in this position, we're going to write the northern hemisphere. I'm going to abbreviate NH for northern hemisphere. I'm going to abbreviate SH for southern hemisphere. So what season would we be in if we were in the northern hemisphere? We're getting indirect light from the sun. So it'd be winter for the north. Southern hemisphere would be summer. Okay. Now the Earth goes around the sun counterclockwise direction. So we're going to go this way. Notice we have to keep the angle the same. Sun now is hitting the northern hemisphere directly. Northern hemisphere is getting direct sunlight. So this is summer in the north. The southern hemisphere is getting indirect light. So this is winter, because it's just hitting, it's getting indirect light from the sun. Okay, next season, same angle, go to axis, go to the equator. Okay, now after the northern hemisphere, after summer, we have fall. So northern hemisphere would be fall, and southern hemisphere would be spring. So whatever season it is in the north, it would be the opposite season in the south.